Hello everybody, this is John. This is the Merschman Seeds Ag Weather Outlook for December 2nd, 2017. I hope everybody's had a great week. You know, we've had some really mild weather, sort of enjoyable because I think we all know that winter will arrive at some point in time and it's going to be sooner than later. So let's take a look at the current jet stream. You really wouldn't tell a whole lot here about that change in the pattern. What we have here is the jet stream sort of pushing up a bit here, it's pushing up a bit here, and that's giving us some really mild weather with that jet stream. But like I said, that's going to change. Now before I get to that, let's take a look at this past month of November. Now here's precipitation. Red is dry, drier than normal, green is wetter than normal. So we have some pretty strong patterns here. Look at the really dry weather we had, dry November over this region here. And look in this region here, particularly eastern parts of Indiana and Ohio, unusually wet. Matter of fact, Ronald Rockhold of Sabina, Ohio sent me an email, said it was the fourth wettest month of November in the last 23 years, or wettest month of November for the last 23 years. You know, if you ever have some interesting statistics like that, feel free to pass them on to me. That really helps tell this story here. So, eastern Indiana and Ohio really stood out over this last month being unusually wet, and I'm sure that delayed harvest operations in those areas a bit. As far as temperatures go in the month of November, we leaned a little bit on the cool side over most of the Corn Belt, just not a lot, but a little bit, 1 to 3 degrees. That's the areas in blue or green here. Then as we get into the central Corn Belt here, pretty close to normal right in this band, but it's area in green here, that's a bit below normal. So that's November. We're in December now, so this briefing is going to talk about what we expect during the month of December. So let's start off by looking at the last week. Pretty quiet. We had some significant precipitation again over parts of the eastern Corn Belt. Not all that heavy, up to maybe a ½ inch, ¼ inch to a ½ inch. So really it was a pretty quiet week as expected. Temperatures, like I said, were quite mild, especially over the central and western Corn Belt. Look at parts of the Dakotas. We're looking at 15 degrees above normal. I'm sure if you're in that area, you probably really appreciate that considering it's winter time. So that's really a blessing for you. You know, give you a hint, that's not going to last. Okay, soil moisture here. We have some wet anomalies, but we also have some dry anomalies. I put out something on the drought monitor, and really we're expanding the drought over parts of the area here, the central sections. So we do need some additional winter recharge, and I'll be watching that very closely. So the Arctic Oscillation is just sort of a general pattern. It gives me some idea, sort of a snapshot of what to expect. Remains negative right through at least the 18th of December, if not longer. That gives us some idea that there's a likelihood of a dip in the jet stream over the central or eastern U.S. and a likelihood of below normal temperatures. So this week we begin to see that transition. Not quite there in the first 5 days. This is the first 5 days, but this trough starts to dig. This area of low pressure, this polar low, starts to sink south. This ridge of high pressure starts to develop, push to the north. We don't see it so much in the next 2 or 3 days, but it's starting to transition. The 5-day average, it starts to push in early this week, depending on where you're at, middle of the week, and we have colder air, much colder air settling in over the area. But I did want to mention that the coldest air is probably not going to get here until a week from now. We're going to have several pushes of cold air, and I don't think the first one is going to be the coldest. The one that comes in late this week into next weekend is probably going to be colder. As far as precipitation goes, I don't think we're going to have all that much, but you know what? It's going to be cold enough for some snow. So there could be some snow, first snow of the season in some areas. But right now it doesn't look like precipitation will be all that light. Now I wouldn't get too excited about this yet. This is an inch or two of snow, but it does show with that second front could be cold enough to get maybe some light snow, some snow flurries. The more significant snow, that's why I set up in the Dakotas. I hope you enjoyed the weather we had recently, because this next week's going to be quite a change, much colder, and some snow. So let's go into the 6 to 10 day range. Now we're into almost the middle of December. Holy cow. The 7th through the 12th. And I haven't done any Christmas shopping yet either. So when I do these briefings, it sort of gets me nudging. I've got to get going here. But the 7th through the 12th, look at this. This is digging this trough right down here in this range. So this is the most amplified pattern in the 6 to 10 day range. That's that second front that drops south. So we get this big trough here. Our ridge, it pushes that jet stream north, and then it dips down here. This is your polar vortex. It's been displaced from where it should be. It's been pushed down to the south. So we peak our coldest temperatures in that 6 to 10 day period. Looks like the most below normal, unusually cold weather will be parts of the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, Great Lakes, and Ohio River Valley, that lighter shade of purple. And that is 10 to 15 degrees below what would be normal. And considering we've had this mild weather, that's going to really feel cold. Then as we get into the 12th through the 17th of December, not much change overall. Now sometimes the models sort of trend back towards climatology, but the basic pattern's still there. It's saying a moderation beyond 10 days. We will see. I'm not so sure. I think it'll moderate. I don't think it'll stay as intense, but I think that overall pattern's still there. So we're looking at 10 days, maybe 2 weeks of this type of colder weather. So here are your precipitation anomalies for week 1. Remember, yellow's dry. Week 2, cold air usually has light precipitation, can't hold as much. So really the story for our ag weather briefing here is cold air is right around the corner. Enjoy this weekend. We're going to warm up well above normal before that cold air works in. But once it works in, looks like it's going to last well into December. Hope you all have a great week. Take care.